French colonial empire. The empire that could not fit on its mainland in Europe and colonized these regions by dominating overseas lands, especially Africa. How did the French, who never left a foothold from Asia to Middle East, from Africa to North America, manage to establish such a great empire? Another question is, did France, which gave independence to most of its colonies in 1960, severed its ties with these countries today? For the answers to these questions, don't forget to watch the video until the end, comment for support and press the like button. After the emergence of the European consciousness that started with the Renaissance, geographical discoveries and colonized activities began. In this period, the use of printing press, gunpowder, and compass provided a significant advantage in favor of the Europeans, while at the same time it caused an increase in reconnaissance and combat power. This superiority they achieved provided a great opportunity for Spain, England, and France to establish colonies outside the mainland. In the history of world colonialism, France and England were in constant competition and struggled throughout history. They continued their war situation in Europe, in the lands they want to establish colonies. Sometimes England and sometimes France emerged victories from these conflicts and wars, while they consolidated their imperial identities. One of the most important reasons why France became an imperial power was, of course, the establishment of colonies in Africa and overseas, along with the Industrial Revolution. In fact, during this period, France didn't have the ability to prepare a project to expand its borders and increase its power, because more than half of its budget was only going to debts, and it was experiencing the disadvantages of having a stagnant population structure. In order to get rid of this financial bottleneck, it had to develop its industry with cheap labor as soon as possible. Of course, while doing this, raw material resources and a wide market was needed. France would find these deficiencies in colonialism by adapting to the New World Order. So where should France start? From the newly discovered America? From the spice paradise of India? From Asia? Or from the future slave paradise of Africa? Moving towards the end of the 17th century, the French decided to make expeditions to both America and India. Having both a small land in Pondicherry, India, the French succeeded in becoming the third European state to colonize India after the Portuguese and British. Continuing their efforts to gain more territory, the French captured Chandernagor in Bengal in 1730. However, the French army, who could not fight the British presence in India, lost the lands they had captured to the British and had to withdraw from India. As for the expedition to America, the French became the third European country to colonize the America after the Spanish and the British. Quickly advancing inland, explorers soon managed to colonize a large area from Mississippi to Chicago, from Ontario to Montreal and Quebec, while occupied Guyana and Saint-Domingue in the South American continent. However, in 1756, things started to turn bad for the French. In the 7 Years' War that started on this date, France, who could not gain superiority against the British, despite taking Austria, Russia, and Spain, became the losing side at the end of the war. As a result of the Treaty of Paris signed, France left all of its lands in the North American continent to the British, while England provided its superiority in the seas and colonialism. Of course, in return, France lost a lot of power both economically and politically. In this situation paved the way for the French Revolution. When the French Revolution broke out in 1789, the Holy Roman Empire, England, the Russian Empire, Spain, and Portugal, which did not accept the Republican government declared in France, declared war on France. In the War of the First Coalition, which started with the proclamation of the First French Republic in 1792, France became the victorious party. Subsequently, when War of the Second Coalition broke out in 1798, the Spanish Empire sided with France in this war. While the Franco-Spanish partnership prevailed in the War of the Second Coalition, which ended in 1802, the cooperation between the two states gradually increased. In fact, with the Treaty of the Amiens signed between the two states in 1802, Spain gifted the Louisiana lands in North America to France. The Americans, who had recently revolted against the British colony, established a state called the United States of America as a result of the War of Independence in 1783. America, which has an extremely innovative, powerful army, was constantly trying to expand its territory. Here, the new lands of the French, which Spain gave as a gift, bordered this powerful state. During this period, the French, under the leadership of Napoleon, were making important wars against England, Russia, and the Holy Roman Empire. Therefore, the colonial territories in America were a burden on the shoulders of France. Wishing to turn it into money, Napoleon asked the then American President Jefferson if he wanted to buy the Louisiana land. Although Jefferson was quite surprised by this offer, he immediately accepted Napoleon's offer. With the agreement made in Paris on April 30, 1803, 2,100,000 square kilometers of land was sold to America for $15 million. The French, whose adventure in America did not have a happy ending, this time set their sights on the vast African lands. Although the French presence in Africa dates back to the 17th century, the main period of colonial expansion began with the occupation of Algeria in the 19th century. The argument that broke out between Hussein Pasha, the Ottoman governor in Algeria, and the French consul suddenly turned into a naval blockade. As a result of this blockade, which lasted for about 3 years, the French army succeeded in occupying the center of Algeria in 1830. However, Algerians chose to resist this occupation and started a revolt against the French under the leadership of Abdul Qadir al-Jazairi. During this period, the French were able to hold only a few port cities due to the lack of adequate support due to the internal turmoil in France. When the dates show 1840, the French, who set foot in Senegal and Equatorial Guinea, colonized this region, and when the support force reached Algeria from the other arm, they started to attack towards the inner parts of Algeria. After the fierce conflicts, all Algerian lands were captured by the French until the end of 1847. As a result of the French attacks to impose their hegemony on Algerians, between 500,000 and 1 million Algerians lost their lives due to the conflict, famine, and disease. With the colonization of Algeria, the French colonial period, which would last more than a century, began in North Africa. When the dates show the year 1848, the monarchy was destroyed once again as a result of the revolution in France, and the Second French Republic was established in 1852 under the leadership of Third Napoleon. During the Third Napoleonic period, while the French colonial lands were doubled, the territories in Algeria and Senegal were expanded. New Caledonia was colonized in 1853, and Cambodia was invaded in 1863, creating a colonial region called French Indochina. Although slavery was abolished in France with the 1848 revolution, the French continued to treat the natives as slaves in all the regions they captured. Even tried to spread Christianity by imposing on the regions they colonized. In addition, France banned the Muslim pilgrim candidates from Algeria and Senegal from going to Mecca and demanded that the same ban be applied to the other states with Muslim citizens. When the dates showed 1870, the Third French Republic was established in France. Under the new management, the French turned their attention back to North Africa, with Tunisia as their first target. The Ottoman Empire was defeated in the War of 93 in 1878, and the collapse process accelerated. In the Berlin Agreement signed after the War of 93, when everyone had a share from the Ottomans, the French also took action to seize Tunisia. Although the French government made many improvements in various fields, from transportation to industry, from financial system to public health, after occupying Algeria and Tunisia, it could not get the sympathy of the citizens of the country in any way. By 1890, while the French began to expand the lands they controlled in West Africa, the explorer Colonel Parfait-Louis-Monté had a big share in this. Colonel Monté set out from West Africa between 1890 and 1892 and brought the region as far as Niger and Lake Chad to the French colonial empire. Another French force which set out from Ecuadorian Guinea moved east and captured the region up to Central Africa, while a small unit that set foot in East Africa succeeded in occupying Djibouti, also sending additional troops to the Indochina. The French expanded their colonial territory in Asia by capturing all of Vietnam and Eastern Siam in 1894. The insatiable French set their sights on the Spanish-controlled Morocco in 1912. Although Morocco had been under the Spanish protectorate since 1884, the country was still reigning. With the French army entering the Moroccan territory, Sultan Abdulhamid had to sign an agreement with the French, while the country became a French colony since 1912. Although the Moroccans, who did not want to live under the French yoke, attacked the French garrison in Fez on April 7, 1912, the events were calmed down by the arrival of the French reinforcements, and a large part of Morocco was taken under control by the French. After this date, France, which continued to expand its colonies' lands in Africa until 1914, the date of the start of the First World War, came to control one-third of the African continent. After the end of the First World War, the French, who made an agreement with the British, added the Syrian lands lost by the Ottoman state at the end of the war to the colonial empire. Thus, the French colonial empire also took over the Middle East after South America, Africa, and Asia. Another feature of the French colonial project at the beginning of the 20th century was the mission of the Christianization, under the name of civilization. It was the duty of European white men to bring civilization to uncivilized black people, according to the church. For this purpose, the French tried to franchise the people under their colonies by adopting the French language and culture. Although Africans who adapted French culture and traditions were promised equal rights with French citizens, this never materialized. It was obvious that such ostensible policies, which were put into effect due to the persecution of the people in the occupied lands, were made to keep the colonial lands. While this assimilation policy of the French continued until 1939, when the Second World War started, the occupation of the France by the Germans in 1940 caused dark clouds to circulate over Africa. Even though the African natives welcomed the occupation of the French mainland, they didn't know that the end of this would touch them. The French, who promised independence to the African natives, who fought alongside France during World War II, recruited a considerable number of African soldiers into the army. However, French Indochina, which couldn't achieve this in the colonial territories in Asia, was occupied by the Japanese in 1941. By 1943, around 3,000 African and Arab origin soldiers in the French army were helping the liberation of France. The Africans, who were struggling with their heart, did not realize that they were deceived once again. Charles de Gaulle, the temporary president of France, didn't have the idea of liberating the colonies in mind. The manifesto proclaimed at the Conference of the Colonial Governors in January 1944 read, "The goals of the civilization work undertaken by France in the colonies exclude any idea of the autonomy. However, the idea of possible independence in the colonies will be totally rejected." When the dates show the year 1945, the Second World War was over, and the French mainland was freed from occupation. Now it was time to keep the promise of independence made by the French. With a statement made by the French government, it was announced that the colonial order in Africa would continue, but Africans who met the conditions would be granted French citizenship. This disappointing statement sparked revolt in all the French colonies. The French government, which wanted to suppress the revolt, made a constitutional amendment at the end of 1946, and decided to elect representatives from the local people to the colonial administration in Africa. However, it had no effect on the revolts, and on the contrary led to its aggravation in Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia, which are called the Maghreb region. In 1953, when the French exiled the Moroccan king, Sultan Mohammed V, to Madagascar, on the grounds that he supported the rebellion, this event further fueled the Moroccan struggle against French and Spanish patronage, especially the Oujda incident, in which the Moroccans attacked the French in the middle of the street, was the peak of the rebellion. After this event, France allowed King Mohammed V to return to Morocco in 1955, while negotiations on independence began the following year. On March 2nd, the French army withdrew from Morocco, and on April 7th, 1956, the Kingdom of Morocco officially gained its independence. French troops withdrew from Tunisia on March 20th, 1956. 18 days after the withdrawal from Festan, Tunisia declared its independence on July 25th, 1957. After the liberation of Morocco and Tunisia, other hopeful African nations increased their revolts against the French. Returning to Asia, a fierce struggle for independence began in French Indochina in 1946. After the end of the Second World War, the French army could not achieve enough success due to its distance from the mainland of France. It could only last until 1954. As a result of the Geneva Conference held in 1954, while France withdrew from Indochina, new states named Northern Vietnam, Southern Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos were established in these lands. When the dates showed 1958, Charles de Gaulle, who was the president of the Fifth French Republic, observed that the French economy had weakened due to the riots. He realized that there was no point in resisting anymore, and in January 1959, he decided to grant the independence to Senegal. The sudden event created a shock effect in French West Africa, while at the same time, it brought about the independence of all French colonies. In 1960, the French government accepted the independence of Benin, Burkina Faso, Chad, Congo, Ivory Coast, and Mali one by one. Now, only Algeria and Djibouti remained as the French colonies on the African continent. Especially the Algerians' War of Independence is an epic story that can be told in a single video. The struggle leaders gathered in Tangier in 1958 while establishing the provisional government of the Republic of Algeria. The struggle for independence would now be carried out through this government. Charles de Gaulle stated that he would bring a political solution to this issue at a time when the environment of revolt and conflict in Algeria reached its peak. In May 1961, a delegation sent by de Gaulle began official talks with the Algerian provisional government. After 6 months of negotiations, a referendum decision was taken on March 18, 1962 in the country. In the referendum held on July 1, 1962, 6 million people voted in favor of independence and 16,000 voted against it. After the referendum was positive, Algeria finally became an independent country on July 5, 1962. During the 8-year War of Independence, while 2 million peasants were forced to leave their land, more than 250,000 Algerians lost their lives. By 1977, while Djibouti, the last French colony in Africa, gained independence, the French persecution that started in 1830 ended. Do you think political independence granted meant the end of the French rule in Africa? I think I would have answered this question adequately if I said that 19 of these 27 African countries that gained independence from France in the last 20 years had a military code. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.